Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Proactive Risk Management for the C-Suite monthly webinar series. I'm the host and moderator for today's webinar, and for those of you who don't know me, my name is Chris Martens. I'm a Vice President Business Development Executive at Assured Partners. We work with management teams across the country who are looking to increase cash flow, reduce volatility, and ultimately get more control over their company's insurance programs and employee benefits. A few thoughts on technology. Given the significance of the topic today and the panelists lined up to speak, it is possible that some of you may experience intermittent video or audio issues. This generally only lasts a minute or two and is most often related to your local internet speed. So just sit tight as it usually passes. Also, if you're having audio issues, you may want to consider switching from computer audio to telephone or vice versa. Looking ahead, we will have time near the end of the program for questions. When appropriate, please type in your questions in the question panel of the chat panel. We may not have time to get to all the questions, but we will look at the questions after the presentation and provide responses back to the attendees. This webinar is being recorded today and will be available for replay. Lastly, if something we've discussed today intrigues you, or you want to schedule some time to go over additional questions or dive deeper into the topic, absolutely reach out to me via email, call my cell phone, or send me a direct message on LinkedIn. As I mentioned to Anthony and Paul prior to today's webinar, I would love to generate discussion and thought leadership from today's topic and welcome any additional conversations. So let's introduce these panelists that I've talked about. So today, coming from the land of Bruce Springsteen, the state of New Jersey, we have Anthony Mento, CEO of Life Brokerage. Anthony, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, good morning, Chris. Thanks for having me. So I'm a advanced markets planner by trade, have a CFP, really working in the wholesale distribution of life insurance solutions, many of which arrive from a planning need from business owners. We touch about 3,000 deals per year, most of which are related to the business market, and we'll support highly skilled professionals like the Chris Martens of the world. And I'm from Hamilton, New Jersey, quite a distance from Asbury Park in the blueberry fields. However, that Springsteen stigma still seems to follow me.
Great person to have from your state. And now moving on, we have Paul Sargent from Principal Financial. Paul, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I live in Des Moines, Iowa, where I don't know that there's a lot of famous rock and roll artists that have emerged from our general geographic area. So I'll punt on that part. But yeah, Chris, my role as principal, I've been here approaching 18 years, all of which working with business owners and financial advisors, really around a lot of different business planning concepts, whether it's exit planning strategies, executive benefits, estate planning. And really excited to share a few ideas today. I think that'll be really relevant, timely for everyone who joined us here this morning.
Love it. And thank you guys both for donating your time and your expertise here for everyone that's going to either watch the call live or watch the replay. So again, our topic today is life insurance in the business market, right? And we're looking to assist and provide solutions to business owners and executives. Now more than ever, CEOs, CFOs, leaders of HR, and business owners need innovative solutions to be proactive when it comes to one of the most overlooked areas on any company's balance sheet: key executive retention and succession planning. So without going too much further into the topic, I'm going to bring in the experts here, Anthony, Paul. Let's dive in. So one of the things that I want to kind of talk about, we're going to I guess let's kind of widen out the lens a little bit for everybody that's on the call that might not be totally familiar. And I'll let both of you guys kind of, take the mic here, but what are executive benefits? What are they? Who should be interested? Why don't one of you guys kind of take the mic here?
Yeah, Chris, I think maybe to kind of drill down into like what are executive benefits, I'm gonna toss that to Paul in a second. But even more specific, like what are the client profile? Like what industries are looking at executive benefits, and what size company should we be dialed in on? How many years should they be in business before you would consider establishing an executive benefit? What does sales look like and the entity structure? So Paul, give us some color on like the client profile, who we should be thinking about, and just a little bit of insight on what is an executive benefit and why does it help business owners that meet this client profile?
Yeah, so I'll start there, Anthony. I think, as we think about executive benefits, when we talk about how employers, business owners, key decision makers in any organization, how they look at the benefits they provide to the people who drive the value in their companies, who are the most important people. We obviously understand we value all of our employees, but we want to look at maybe those top few individuals who we really want to put a little extra emphasis on providing benefits. So when we think about executive benefits, it's not tied specifically to an executive, but really who are the difference makers in your organization. So when we talk about these executive benefit plans today, don't be thinking purely about the CEOs, CFOs of Fortune 500 companies. Think about the handful of key individuals inside of the organization that you are a part of, clients that you work with, that would really benefit from having specific benefits for those individuals. Now, the benefit of working here at Principal is that we record keep about 25,000 business owner plans, everything from succession plans like buy-sell agreements to these executive benefit style agreements. With all of that data, we have the benefit of understanding who are the types of businesses, entities that actually implement these kind of plans, ultimately, which ones benefit the most from these type of solutions. So when we think about the types of revenues, we're typically working with organizations that are a little bit beyond the startup type of plan. We still obviously do a lot of planning with startups, but we're looking for those growth businesses as well as long-term established businesses. The bulk of the organizations that we work with are small to medium-sized businesses. We tend to find that small to medium-sized businesses are underserved markets. So when we think about the number of businesses we have that are fewer than 100 employees on our books, it's over 77%. So when we think about the types of solutions that we'll cover today, these are geared towards, that small to medium-sized business. Of course, they can be applicable to larger organizations as well. But really, we find that there's a lot of opportunity to work with small to medium-sized businesses to really talk about plans that may not be on the radar of those particular business owners.
Appreciate that, Paul. So as we contemplate how to retain and reward some of these key folks, like what data do we use to determine what that market looks like and what the job market looks like and why these plans might be necessary in today's economic environment?
Yeah, so I'm sure, like you and me, Anthony, everyone here on the call is poring over the job openings and labor turnover survey from the Department of Labor website every month. I know it's certainly something that I enjoy poring over day in and day out.
Yeah.
But what that is unique to tell us information on is the Department of Labor tracks how many employees voluntarily leave one job to go to another. Not how many left because they retired, not how many left because they're on disability, not how many left because they died, but those who took different opportunities who are able-bodied workers. And if we've looked over the past really 10 years, these numbers have been at all-time highs. The people who are voluntarily going from one job to another because the labor market is so tight, because unemployment is so low, is really telling that business owners are struggling to find ways to recruit, reward, and retain their top people. And so we think about a lot of the individual businesses out there. It's thinking about, hey, my competition is calling my top salespeople. My account managers are being poached because the market is so good for their type of work. Those are the kind of conversations we have day in and day out with business owners. And what this report from the Department of Labor tells us is that while unemployment is at really record lows, the unemployment rate for key employees is always going to be 0% because there's always value to be had in getting a key employee from an organization. So it allows us to look at our conversations with business owners around what are you doing to incentivize your key employees, retain them, and ultimately potentially recruit new folks to your organization.
Yeah, well said, well said. And I got quite literally hot off the press today, right? 353,000 jobs added last month, right? Less than one available person in relation to the openings. And what you see by the report here is that quits certainly outpaced by a couple million layoffs and discharges, right? So the market is really difficult to capture and retain and reward some of these key folks. So, right, absent of just overpaying, Paul, in the form of wages and compensation, right, and like really putting small businesses and medium-sized businesses in a financial crunch, you know, the executive benefit market has really opened up new opportunities to incentivize and recruit and retain some of this top talent. If and Paul, your experience with Principal, what is it, 26, 27, 28,000 business clients, right? That you're supporting. Based on some of the metrics that you've captured as a company, what do you see that matters the most to business owners today in relation to how they've actually taken action and engaged with a professional company like Principal?
Yeah, so we survey our business owner clients every single year. And I would tell you, Anthony, for the last 10 years running, the number one concern we hear from business owners is how do I protect my business from the loss of a key employee? That business protection planning is the largest concern we hear from business owners, and it has been that way every single year for the past decade. That trumps, your employee benefits around, health insurance and wellness. It trumps succession planning, qualified plans. Those are still concerns that business owners obviously have. But as we talk about that tightened labor market, the value of key talent, the number one concern business owners have had is what can I do to really protect my business from losing these valued individuals as a part of my organization? So it is not just one of the scenarios where, the Department of Labor tells us, our own customers tell us the exact same thing as well.
Paul,
Let me jump in here. Well, let me jump in here real quick,
please.
Anthony. I just want to kind of harp on this, just to kind of focus on it, right? So if we look at the different categories, right, we got business protection, health and wellness. There's two that really kind of almost jump out of the pack, right? If we were looking at a horse race, you got two horses that are really sticking out to me. And number one, that's the non-medical benefits, and two, voluntary benefits. And I think there might be a disconnect between what folks in the insurance industry, the brokerage community, the consultant community might think that business owners are concerned and thinking about. And there's a disconnect because it seems like this is what business owners are thinking about. I'd be curious, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but my guess is that employee turnover as a concern has also increased from, say, 5 or 10 years ago to where it is today. Again, going back to the employment data, there's way more jobs. There's a lot of competition out in the marketplace,
Yep.
And I think business owners are looking to attract and retain by different methods. And I'd love to kind of, if you could talk about that a little bit more. What are the non-medical benefits or voluntary benefits that Principal provides?
Yeah, so I think when we talk about those types of benefits, I really categorize them as the rank and file benefits. So we think about, health insurance, group life, group LTD, STD, vision, dental. Those are really the kind of benefits that, quite frankly, as we start talking about the executive benefit space, are the table stakes benefits, the qualified plan, really the benefits that are really valuable to all employees, but are really geared towards the rank and file employees. The voluntary benefits are kind of taking that a step further and looking at, additional benefits on the group life plan, or where we can buy up additional coverage, things along those lines where they are, again, group in nature, where the benefit is tied to, again, more rank and file solutions. What we tend to find is often overlooked relative to those type of solutions are, those benefits are really designed for the rank and file for all employees. Where we tend to have issues, and we'll touch on this in a little bit more detail here momentarily, but really, what can we do above and beyond those types of benefits for the select group of employees that kind of make up that executive management, highly sought after, highly coveted key employee teams. So our emphasis is really looking at those things typically are often addressed with a business owner. There's often plans they have in place for the rank and file employees. What most business owners aren't aware of is plans that can really specifically benefit a select group of employees outside of the traditional means like the qualified plan or the group benefits. And we're going to touch on those here in a little bit more detail momentarily.
Now, if you really dial in on the most underutilized tools, right, in this survey is number 3 and number 7, right? Your income protection and your supplemental key employee benefits. So as we continue to evolve the discussion, Paul, and I'm big on like examples and real life application. What industries are just getting crushed and poached day in and day out that are having the toughest time retaining this top talent?
Yeah, so we see a lot in the white collar professional space. Your law firms, your CPA firms, anyone that requires licensure, that is, the additional levels of education. Engineering firms, as we talk about the environment of infrastructure, we talk about architecture, engineering, those are still in pure growth mode in a lot of places around the country. And those highly specialized individuals, because there is such a limited pool, makes them, highly sought after, highly coveted, and more important to those organizations. You'll also see, as I'm sure you're seeing across the country, there's a lot of consolidation in the medical and hospital world where private practice physicians are either being bought out, joining larger hospital organizations or networks. There's a lot of planning that can be done with those smaller entities and organizations to incentivize those physicians, to retain those individuals from out being poached by a larger organization. And that's a very big opportunity to have a planning discussion with those firms. But I would tell you one of the areas that maybe isn't falling into that true white collar profession that we see a significant amount of benefit in these kind of plans is in the construction space. Construction across the country, despite interest rates, despite everything else, is still a growth industry. While it's not where it was back in 2016 or 2017, where we tend to find opportunity is a lot of small contracting organizations, medium-sized construction companies, trade organizations, plumbers, electricians. Those are industries where, again, highly skilled, but also looking at a disparity between, day laborers versus project managers, engineers in those organizations. Those individuals are highly sought after. If you've recently built a house or seen a local project on a commercial building, odds are it's never on time. It always is a little bit delayed because odds are they're having staffing issues. And a lot of it comes to project managers, those who can manage subcontractors. Being able to provide specific benefits outside of the rank and file employees for those key individuals is really something we get a lot of traction with contracting and construction industries. So it is a lot of industries that are impacted. But again, thinking about those highly specialized individuals within those companies as well.
Appreciate that. So Paul, Chris, as a business owner myself, right, there's so much to do in the beginning of the year, right? We have kickoff meetings, we have budgeting, we have marketing plans, we have sales goals, we are refining our operations. We want to get out in front of our most important customers and see them and touch them and kind of nurture those relationships. Why should the folks on this call be looking at executive benefit type strategies now versus pushing it into a more ideal time like the summer when things can change or slow down a bit?
Yeah, great question, Anthony. And I think, really comes down to, why now is a relevant conversation because we're all reconciling 2023 financials. We're looking at what 2023 looked like through that financial lens. A part of that, we're looking at how we compensated our key employees coming off of year-end bonuses, looking at what we paid out to really, again, create incentives and value to the ones who drive the most meaningful revenue to our businesses. And a lot of business owners are really thinking about what can I be doing for this subset of key employees? How can I address the executive compensation discussion? What can I be doing versus just paying higher salaries? Is there things that I could be doing that might give me as the business owner more control? And we're also getting a lot of feedback from employees. This is the time of year where if you've got a qualified plan and maybe you have some highly compensated folks who are putting dollars into the plan, but unfortunately they put too much in, or the plan maybe failed some testing and they're getting refunds back, they're typically going to your HR team right now and saying, hey, why am I getting money coming back out of my 401k? What's going on? Why can't I contribute inside the qualified plan? And these are all timely things for us to come in and have a conversation with the business owner about what options might be available to help you address those concerns around not only you as an ownership group, but also your key employees.
Fair. As we continue to drill down, so all right, maybe the executive benefit is a good idea, but like, let's start to translate into discussion with a business owner. What are some of the discussion points you want to uncover when meeting with a business owner to see if a non-qual executive plan would be a fit for their company?
Yeah, and I would love to tell you, Anthony, that I came up with all of these, little quirks here on the screen. But I would tell you, these are all things that we've heard from successful advisors who are good at helping business owners in this marketplace, and then also what we hear from business owners. These are things that we hear consistently from business owners. And I think as you're having that planning conversation with either your own management team as the business owner, or if you're an advisor working with business owners, you ask the question of who's the last person you want to have walk in tomorrow and hand you a resignation letter. Oftentimes we think about, you're having an insurance person come in talking about, hey, if Anthony's your key guy and he gets hit by a bus tomorrow, or eaten by a shark, or falls out of a hot air balloon and he dies tomorrow, what's the impact of the business? I mean, that's a valid concern, but in reality, he's probably not going to be eaten by a shark, probably not falling out of a hot air balloon. But if he gets a call from a competitor with a competing offer, that might be something that he entertains. So we want to talk about what is the visualization of seeing that key employee walk out the door. The second thing, you're not alone as a business owner. Again, the number one concern we hear from business owners is protecting against the loss of key talent. It is the biggest concern that we hear, because we know that those individuals drive revenue, that they do the work of 2 or 3 individuals. The cost of replacement is going to be substantial, and the impact of the overall business value and revenue is noticeable with their departure. Now, one of the things we can also articulate to that business owner is that, we have alternative solutions than the traditional ways of paying additional salary, putting the 401k in. And unfortunately, there are times where we do see business owners who feel that the only way that they can retain a key employee is by giving away equity to that key employee, giving away stock. We see this in closely held family businesses. It becomes problematic. So we want to make sure business owners understand that there are solutions out there that can help key employees think and act like an owner, but let the owner maintain 100% control of their business. Those solutions exist. Most business owners aren't aware of what those are. We're going to do some brief education today on some of the solutions that exist, but help business owners understand there are plenty of alternative ways to retain key employees. And then last thing, think about yourself as a business owner. A large contracting firm we've worked with for many years, they have some of these executive benefit plans in place. They sat on a panel and told us, we create asymmetrical benefits for our asymmetrical contributors. We do look at our employees differently. We love all of our children, but we do look at a few of them a little bit differently because of the value they bring to our organization. We want to make sure that we match the benefits to those individuals based on their contributions to the business.
Let me just jump in here real quickly, guys. So here's something that we want to almost address with your small mid-sized business owners is implementing, right? And sometimes there's a fear, whether it's perceived or actual, that, oh man, this is going to take either I'm going to have to hire somebody to implement this stuff, or the person that is my HR, my bookkeeper, my office manager, right? They might wear a lot of hats. I'm not going to be able to add to their workload. Are these solutions a heavy lift? Are these easily implementable, or is there something that principal can help out with and really outsource the work to you guys? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so our approach, and again, where we work with Chris, yourself, Anthony, and his team as well, we take a very consultative approach. Like Anthony, my background is in planning, so we look at this from a one size does not fit all for business owners. So in reality, what we're going to do is we're going to start asking questions and really bring the narrative around a lot of the planning that goes into these particular topics. So we take a consultative approach. Our expertise, we're here every step of the way. So not only are we going to be there to kind of educate like we're doing today, but we're there as a part of the discovery process with the business owner client. We're there as far as presenting the financial modeling for the solutions that we're looking to implement. And then once the plan actually goes into effect, we're also acting as the administrator on these plans as well. So it is a full service turnkey type of plan, but it is a collective team effort. So we work very closely with Chris, we work very closely with Anthony and his team, and then we have a team behind myself that we're really here every step of the way. So the goal here is not to make everyone an expert, but to know that you've got the resources behind you to really, help implement these types of solutions.
That's great. Thank you.
Well said, Paul. So let's just kind of get into it a bit. Let's talk about, like, first and foremost, whether you're highly compensated or rank and file. You enter the workplace, you establish a lifestyle, and you're encouraged to save as much as you can in your qualified plans, right? Your 401k, max it out, right? And 8 out of 10 times that particular employee doesn't really save anywhere else. They are driving and increasing the Social Security benefit. They are saving in their qualified plan. But what they're not really taught is that although you're diversifying within your qualified plan assets and different allocations and small cap and large cap and international, you're not really creating any different locations of your assets, of whether it be capital type assets or tax-free, type buckets. But I think the bigger issue than that is that, right, the higher the income you earn, the larger the gap that your 401k or 403b and Social Security benefit will actually cover, right? So there is this almost, and I'll call it, reverse discrimination against the highly compensated individuals who are obviously at a fair market value because of the revenue or the talent that they bring to the company. How do we help them close that gap, and why is this relevant to employee retention?
Great. Yeah. I mean, excellent question, Anthony. I think, as you look at this, if we go a standard 80% income replacement in retirement, qualified plans and Social Security are really meant for that rank and file employee. So there is that gap that exists when the more money you make, the less percentage of income that the qualified plan and Social Security are going to make. And then a lot of times the question then comes back to the employer is, what can you do to help those individuals save more money? And that's when we start talking about plans outside the qualified plan and what we're going to call the non-qualified plan arena. And when we talk about non-qualified plans, it's a catch-all. I mean, there's a wide range of non-qualified solutions that exist. A lot of times, if you're talking with maybe the 401k advisor who's got the 401k plan, they may know traditional non-qualified deferred compensation and where it does and does not fit. But there's a lot of different plan designs outside of that traditional planning of a non-qualified plan that makes sense for the more small to medium-sized business, where maybe it's not 100 employees that want to participate, but maybe a select few that the employer wants to put additional benefits above and beyond the qualified plan. So really what we want to do is have the discussion around what's the right kind of non-qualified plan that makes sense for that particular business owner. So when we go through that, go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I might, although I think it's a good barometer, I'm gonna disagree with that 80% standard living, right? I know how I behave, and I've seen the Martens families in action, and in retirement, every day is a Saturday. So, if you're spending like it's Saturday or Sunday, that 80% number, in my opinion, is the bare bone minimum that you're going to want to, fill in terms of that gap. So okay, so we have a gap to fill. We want to try and do that. We want to collaborate, right? Because we're not looking to win a negotiation with our key employee, right? We both are going to need to come away with this as seeing an opportunity to enhance both the value of the business and the employee. So, where do we start? What information do you need to start talking about some of these planning techniques?
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. And I think for the next 6 hours of our call, we'll go through all the different plan designs and go in details. Or what we can do is really, leverage our team as the experts and get everyone on the call comfortable with asking a handful of questions. As we're sitting down with business owners, CFOs, HR directors, kind of going through, hey, we've identified there's a need to put a key employee plan, a non-qualified plan in for a select group of individuals. What are the questions that we want to ask to put us on the right path towards the right kind of plan design? The number one question we want to get everyone comfortable in asking is understand what the corporate tax structure is. Is it an LLC? Is it an S Corp, C Corp? The reason why we ask that questions, a lot of these plans, are going to vary based off of the overall corporate tax structure and what and when the actual tax benefits are to the organization and the employee. That gives us a foundational understanding of where we want to start. The second question is, who's the plan for? Oftentimes, as we're talking with the business owner, with an equity partner in the organization, it might start around a conversation around an employee, and we start talking about the plan designs, and that employer says, gosh, you know what, that sounds pretty good. Can I participate as an owner in the plan? And depending on the type of plan, sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no. So we want to get a better understanding of who is the plan really for. Is it employees? Is it owners? Is it both? It is not uncommon for us to have a separate plan for employees and a separate plan for the owners in the same organization. So we'll certainly talk about that here in a little bit more detail momentarily. But as we think about those key employee groups, as we're talking to the owner, the last question is really important for us to understand with the business owner as they prioritize the plan for their key employees. Every one of these plans that we discuss at some point in time is going to have a tax deductibility back to the organization because compensation will be paid to the executive. The question we want to know is what's more important to that business owner? Is it control of the plan assets, meaning retention, or is it a current deduction versus a deferred deduction down the road? And I'll elaborate that on a little bit here. So in certain plan designs, if I've got Anthony here, if I want to retain him more, I'm going to put a plan in place where I control the plan assets, not Anthony. If he leaves, I maintain control. The trade-off is when I eventually owe him a bonus, my deduction will come as a deferred deduction. I will get it down the road. I will still get it, but it's not going to be today versus in the future. The trade-off is I control the plan, so I have more of a hand in how those assets are retained as the company asset. The other option would be if I really want that tax deduction today, there are plans where Anthony would then be the owner, be controlling of the plan assets. So he's the owner, he has control. The trade-off I get as the owner is I get a current tax deduction. So we're weighing what's more important to the owner, retaining and controlling or current deduction and letting the employee have some control inside the plan. And we'll go through an example here in just a moment on kind of really where that makes a lot of sense for business owners.
So forgive me because, right, I think the industry and the employee benefits segment of our industry make this far more complex than it needs to be, right? So there's really three questions. Are you telling me, Paul, that we can get off the ground with the answers to three questions? Like, what is your structure? Who is the plan for? And what's more important to you? Control of the plan assets or current tax deduction? And the answer to those three questions will shape the next step in the conversation. Is that fair?
100% fair. And then from there, we're going to have a deeper conversation on who are the participants, what kind of contributions, time horizon, and we'll dig a little bit deeper from there. But without these foundational questions, we're really kind of shooting in the dark. These will give us the direction to go with.
Yeah. So the 36-page fact finder, Paul, that's not necessary at this point.
I mean, if you're into that kind of thing, I personally wouldn't do it because we have a lot more information that we can do. Again, bringing our team in on the back end. Be comfortable with three questions.
Chris, would it be appropriate at this time to just maybe share a very basic structure on how an employee retention plan would work?
The only way that I'm going to let you do it is if you just let me give you credit really quickly. So I was going to kind of mention this after, but I'm going to do it right now. One of the things leading up to today's call, for the people that are watching this and going to watch on replay, is I said to Anthony, having seen his presentations previously and been at watched some of his webinars, Anthony Mento does a phenomenal job with his case studies, right? It's the Mento case study. I've coined it today. We're going to trademark this after the call. The Mento case study. He's going to show a couple of these today. He's going to show one in this next slide. But this really is just an amazing thing that you do, Anthony. So why don't we kind of go to the next slide and wow the people on the call here.
I hope I get some
Well,
residuals being a part of this as well, for what it's worth.
Well, I appreciate that, but again, as the business owner, right? Like, we don't have a lot of time to like go through and learn and get so involved, and that we're in the weeds, and we eventually become paralyzed with information per se. So, drilling down to the most relevant questions, and then describing a plan through economics in a story format from left to right was always something that was taught to me that resonated, right? You have like 3 to 5 minutes with a busy, HR director, CFO, right? CEO, and we keep things simple, right? So what you're looking at here is in the most simplest form. The economics of a max funded life insurance design that acts as an employee executive benefit. And columns 1 through 5 are nothing more than projections based off of the policy you can purchase to fund this promise, right? And it's quite literally that simple. You stay with me 10 years, and I'm going to move fairly quickly. You stay with me 10 years, and I'm going to fund the Mr. Employee, right? I'm the CEO speaking to my employee, Mr. Key Employee. You stay with me for 10 years, and I'm going to put $25,000 into this program per year. No questions asked. And after you fulfill that term, I am going to transfer the ownership of this policy per our signed agreement over to you. And at that time, you're going to need to recognize that benefit as a taxable event, but don't stress. The policy itself will provide the cash flow to pay that income tax due upon that transfer. And then that cash value and the death benefit associated with it to benefit your family and your children and your future descendants is all yours. One option of managing this policy is to wait until your retirement age 66, in which at that time you can take advantage of the tax favored attributes of life insurance and distribute $30,000 of tax-free income to supplement your retirement. So you can enjoy your travel, your spouse, your grandkids at that phase of your life. So if I then separate the policy values in columns 1 through 5, and I just kind of bifurcate employer values in columns 6 through 9 and key person values in columns 10 through 15, you see that the employer retains control of the asset at this point, just like Paul described, right? Question number 3 was, what's more important, control of the asset or tax deductions? In this instance, the answer was control of the asset. So the employer gets to keep and utilize those cash values on their balance sheet to pledge, borrow, do whatever they wish, right? In addition to providing the employee a valuable death benefit. And then at that point in time, once the term of the agreement is fulfilled, which in the example I gave was 10 years, you see the bonus coming over to the employee in column 10. Column 11 demonstrates how the policy cash value can pay the income tax on that bonus. And columns 13, 14, and 15 get to be, right, the fun part that the employee gets to enjoy because they've given their employer 10 really quality years of service. So this is just one example of the strategies that we would employ, that Chris and Paul would employ in trying to build that collaborative effort between benefit to employer and benefit to employee, right? And there's a whole nother segment of this discussion as to why this would be a far better tool than just a simple, cash bonus or a salary increase, right? They seem to be short-term satisfaction type items when you're granting immediate cash. Or this is a more meaningful long-term commitment that kind of, again, meets that collaboration point between benefit employee, benefit employer.
Anthony, let me kind of just jump in here if okay. And I just want to kind of ask some simple questions. So, let's say, an employer implements something like this, right? And they contribute $25,000, right, into the plan for 10 years. And, everything works out as planned. Employee gets $30,000 a year, net after taxes, right, for 20 years. And let's say they pass away peacefully in their sleep after 20 years at age 85, 86. The family still gets a tax-free death benefit of what is that, $352,000. So employer puts in $25,000 for 10 years, $250,000. Employee gets tax net after tax $600,000 over 20 years, and his family and descendants get $350,000 income tax free. To me, it's an absolute no-brainer. Plus, you have an attraction and retention tool on the front end for the employer. Absolute no-brainer, Anthony. Thank you.
You understood that to be correct, Chris?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, absolute no-brainer.
Yeah. So as we continue to evolve and we talk about employee benefits, they don't always have to be, right, supplemental income type benefits. It could be as simple as just providing the family some additional income replacement, right? The number one reason that our industry or life insurance companies manufacture product, and the number one sales application is income replacement, right? Quite literally, and it's a math equation. If you're 30 years old and you have $200,000 of income to replace through your expected work tenure of 40 more years, it's a math equation, right? We need to replace the income in the event of premature death. And we can apply that similar formula to life insurance, disability insurance, right? And it's fairly simple. Paul, I think we'd be remiss to kind of skip over the ability to just talk through some of these non-retirement type benefits and more protection type benefits, utilizing some of the underwriting programs and structures that Principal has taken the time to create to cater to their 28,000 business customers. So can we dig into one of the term programs that you may offer a business owner?
Yeah, I think what's the best way to do that, Anthony, is to illustrate what we're really talking about. So we think back around the supplemental retirement, how, again, those plans, 401k plans, group benefit plans, are really meant for the rank and file employees. When we talk about group life insurance, the same thing is typically the case. You're typically seeing, limited benefits where, most businesses don't have a group life plan with more than $75,000 of employer provided group life insurance to their employees. In this example that we're showing here, they've got a $50,000 group life benefit. Again, for your employees who are making 50, 60 grand a year, that $50,000 is roughly 100% salary replacement for that individual. But if we start thinking about the CEO, the senior VPs, those highly compensated folks, if you look at that CEO making $350,000 a year, that same $50,000 benefit is a fractional percentage of income replacement in retirement. So what we're really looking at, while these plans are designed to be non-discriminatory, to Anthony's point earlier, there's actually a little bit of reverse discrimination going on because the income replacement to those executives isn't the same as it is to a rank and file employee. So what we have the opportunity to look at is how can we carve out that executive group and provide them additional life insurance, disability insurance benefits above and beyond what's in their group plans, and create an additional incentive, create an additional benefit, again, asymmetrical benefits for asymmetrical contributors. In this scenario, we have the ability to get a standalone guaranteed issue life insurance or disability policy. Here we're illustrating the life insurance piece where it's done for the executive group. So we're looking for the white collar management executive levels, And we can design this to either equalize the benefit, meaning give them 100% salary replacement, or oftentimes owners want to provide a benefit above and beyond that. They want to provide a multiple of life insurance benefit to their employees. Now, this can be an employee owned benefit where they would own the life insurance policy, name their own beneficiary. If they were to leave the organization, it's portable as well. So there's more flexibility than a traditional group life insurance. But again, it's one of those benefits that can be supplemental to their group life insurance that goes above and beyond for a select group of individuals inside the organization.
Oh, I'm going to ask you to hit the timeout button here. So it's a great idea, but that group life benefit is real easy. Right, life insurance is difficult. Right, the exam process and going through right a stranger coming into my house and drawing 3 vials of blood and asking me to lay on the floor and hook up an EKG machine, or I just do all this paperwork. The group life thing is automatic enrollment. There's no underwriting. Everybody gets it, right? So why would I want to create this headache for my HR team?
Yeah, and again, we make it very simple. We've dedicated resources to do all the heavy lifting on this. So from the agent's perspective, the broker's perspective, we're utilizing very basic census information to get the group approved within our underwriting platform. We have a dedicated onboarding team that does all the paperwork, all the onboarding. Everything is done digitally. Participants are getting emails for electronic signatures, policies are e-delivered. We could not make this any easier. And again, it's one of those plans where we look at employees, again, valuing things that are differentiators from what the rank and file employees get. So we want to make sure that the lift is not a heavy one from not only the HR director, the CFO, but also from the financial advisor or broker who's working with the business owner as well. So we really built out our platform to make it as easy as possible.
Okay. Kind of knew the answer to that, Paul.
I figured you did, Anthony.
Yeah. All right.
So in the interest of time, I do want to maybe jump ahead a little bit here and just talk about, we mentioned the onboarding piece of it. We also, all these plans we've talked about, we reference the 27,000 plans. We do all the administration here at Principal as well. So everything is done in-house. We're not outsourcing to any third party. It's not a general 800 number that employers can call into or advisors can call into. There is a dedicated point of contact. So we want to make sure that we are committed to the entire longevity of the plan with a business owner, not just any sort of product implementation. So I wanted to make sure we hit on that, and I do want to save enough time for us to talk about the exit planning piece of this as well, Anthony.
Let me just kind of jump in here. And I don't want to, I think we might be able to kind of go over a little bit on time, so I don't want to feel like we have to kind of rush too much. But there were some things I think that you said and Anthony kind of touched on, right? Sometimes that individual life insurance application process either can be daunting, whether perceived or actual. And you mentioned something about, guaranteed issue. Can we kind of delve into that a little bit for people that are watching the call?
Yeah, so let's dig a little bit into that. So kind of going back to the program itself, when we think about what this really is, it is a guaranteed issue program, meaning that we are looking at executive mortality. So we're looking white collar, professional, making at least $75,000 a year of compensation. So this is not a rank and file employee benefit. It is guaranteed issue. So meaning there is no underwriting. The only questions we are going to ask, are they actively at work and are they a tobacco user? The actual product solution, it is a 10-year or 20-year level term option. So it is not a group term product. It's the pricing is going to increase every year. Those rates are locked in. Depending on the group, we have different rate classes. So we actually go through an underwriting process where we're looking at the size of the group, the age of the group, all different factors. And we have different ratings that, better pricing based on larger groups. But ultimately, the idea behind this is we are creating a benefit to the employee. So level term duration, known cost. We also have the ability to convert this policy for the first 5 years. And what I mean by convert is they can actually exchange the term insurance for a permanent cash value universal life product without any sort of underwriting. So if there is someone who has health concerns, who maybe wouldn't be able to qualify for life insurance going forward, they'd have the ability to convert this into a lifetime life insurance contract without having to go through any sort of medical underwriting. So we do look at this as a great opportunity to create a standalone benefit for those key employees. And again, it is a key employee benefit. So we are looking at this for that management executive level, and looking at a group of at least 10 individuals or more. So the barrier to entry is not having to have 100 individuals. We can actually do this for groups as little as 10 lives.
Well done, Paul. So okay, as we approach the top of the hour here, we touched upon two segments of the offering. One is the key employee retention, right, and the restoration of benefits. Second is protection-based, offerings.
Yep.
Now let's dig a little bit more into the mind of the business owner and how we can support their interests that will also align with obviously the first two segments of the presentation. But Paul, let's talk about business continuation and how we can help.
Yeah, so I'm going to move forward here a little bit as we think about, again, where we are having the meaningful conversations right now with business owners, again, because of timing, coming off of year-end financials. A lot of business owners are assessing, really what their financial business looks like after 2023. So they're working with their attorneys and CPAs, getting tax filings done. And a lot of times we're having the conversation around, what the business value looks like to that particular business owner and what that means as far as their business continuity plan, maybe their succession plan, may call it exit planning, but we're really looking to that business owner to help them understand how we can help them plan for the planned exit or maybe the unplanned exit of their business. Now, for a lot of business owners that we work with, a lot may have an idea rattling around between their ears of what their business is valued at. I would tell you the last 3 or 4 years, for some odd reason, have had a meaningful impact on a lot of businesses, whether it's interest rates, whether it was that kind of global pandemic thing that happened. There's a lot of business owners that have had their business value impacted over the last handful of years. In addition to this, again, not a terminology that I came up with, but I read a few articles referencing the silver tsunami of baby boomers who are looking to transition their businesses over the next handful of years. And with 3.5 million being surveyed saying they're looking to exit relatively soon, there's a lot of concern around how do we actually do that type of planning. And oftentimes, as we're having those exit planning, succession planning, continuity planning discussions, it's going to tie into that executive planning conversation we've already been having. Maybe the intent is to transition to a key employee. Maybe the intent is to transition to children, and we want to keep the key employees happy. Those are all common concerns that we're hearing right now. And then probably the thing that I think, Anthony, I'm sure you see it as well, is, we're staring down the barrel of a huge, huge estate tax planning change that is coming at the end of next year. The 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act individual provisions are set to sunset at the end of 2025. What that means is a lot of business owners who have their net worth tied to their business may not be in a estate tax liability situation today, but with the reset of the estate tax exemption amount coming back at the end of 2025, a lot of business owners are going to be looking at an unwanted tax liability, especially tied to the value of their business. So now is as important of a time to think about business continuity and succession planning and how it ties into all of the other things we've already talked about.
Yeah. So Paul, you keep talking about business valuation and right, how to exit. Would you be willing, and do you have the resources to help some of the attendees on the call value their business? I mean, it's quite expensive to go through a business valuation. Do you have any tools in-house that you may be able to offer?
Well, Anthony, I'm glad you asked. As it turns out, we do. One of the things that we realized as an insurance company, as a business that really helps business owners, is that starting point of understanding what the business is worth is fundamental to making sure we have a good plan in place. And to your point, Anthony, a lot of business owners don't have their business valued because it costs meaningful dollars. To go to a CPA, to go to a certified appraiser and get a formal valuation done can be upwards of $30,000, $40,000, depending on the size and nature of your business. If we're looking at, utilizing that value to have a planning conversation, most business owners aren't willing to spend those types of dollars to simply understand how we should be incorporating insurance into our buy-sell agreement, into our continuation plan. So back in 2008, Principal rolled out an informal business valuation program. What we do is we employ about a dozen CPAs and tax attorneys, and we're able to work with business owners around getting 3 years of business financials and putting together an informal business valuation to help initiate that planning discussion. So what we're looking at in this valuation process is helping that business owner get a baseline understanding of what the business is worth, to talk about how we can incorporate risk management strategies into their buy-sell agreement, into their exit plan, into the estate planning conversations as well. And when we talk about the barrier to entry of a large fee for a certified appraisal, our informal valuation is a complimentary service that we offer. We do not charge a fee for this particular service. We do about 100 of these valuations every single month for business owners across the country. And the idea is that we're able to help them understand where to initiate that planning conversation around buy-sell funding, estate planning, and ultimately all the things that go with business planning around executive benefits and key employee retention as well.
Incredibly valuable, right? You can't really plan without a valuation. You're kind of like driving without GPS, right? It's a very difficult thing to do, and it will naturally evolve into buy sell discussion, which we're going to take up in the next slide, which I believe is arguably the most valuable service offering that Principal will showcase, because 9 out of 10 valuations will uncover something that may be out of place, right? If it's a stated value that is like hasn't been updated since 2014, that was supposed to be updated at the annual shareholder meeting. Well, not all small businesses have an annual shareholder meeting, right? You tend to go to out here, at least in the South Jersey area, you go catch a Phillies game and you talk about your strategic plan. You don't restate the valuation, which causes a lot of conflict. How many documents we get that are unsigned or can't even place them, or the book language of the disability doesn't match the definition of the policy. There's just so many things that kind of go undone, and that is like eye-opening to a business owner, that actually stopped surprising me as we continue to look and offer this service. Paul, give us a little color about, right, what is a buy-sell review and why it makes sense.
Yeah, and I think you hit a lot of the key bullet points there, Anthony. We talk about with business owners, they're busy working in their business. Rarely are they spending time working on these kind of aspects of their business. Oftentimes we find with business owners is maybe they have an operating agreement, maybe they have a boilerplate buy-sell agreement that they worked with years ago that they shoved in a desk drawer and hasn't really been updated to reflect any changes in their business. We recognize that a lot of business owners don't have the resources to really sit down and really do an audit of this document with consistency and with expertise. So one of the things, again, in addition to the business valuation that we'll do, our attorneys will also do a complimentary review of that buy-sell agreement. And what the review is intended to do is really do a check and balance against what we would consider the best practices, making sure there's provisions around what happens if a partner dies, what happens if they become disabled, what happens if your partner gets divorced, because it'll never be you, it'll always be your partner, what happens if there's a dissolution of the business, is the value determined correctly, is it updated the right way, as Anthony mentioned, is the dang thing signed. We see things like that all the time. As an example, we reviewed a buy-sell agreement a couple of years ago that was drafted in 1985. I won't tell you where I was in 1985. I was around, but I won't tell you where I was. But it had not been updated in over 30 years. Inside that buy-sell agreement, there was 2 owners with a stated value of each of $1 million. So establishing a $2 million valuation. When we reviewed the buy-sell agreement, the business was worth over $30 million. The reason why this is important, and thank goodness nobody died, had one of those partners died, all that would have been owed to their surviving spouse was the $1 million, not the 15 million, the 50% of the 30 million. So they avoided a huge pitfall in planning by not updating their agreement. Simple things like that don't seem like a big deal on paper are actually devastating financially long term because these are legal bound documents. So we look at this as a chance to do best practice review. It's not a, hey, your attorney's not smart for doing it this way, they should be doing it this way. It's really about we're checking a balance against our best practices. And keep in mind, you as the advisor working with the business owner, our CPAs, our attorneys will work with you as well. They don't charge fees for their service on here to have conversations with business owners and their professionals around, what our findings would particularly be. So it is a complimentary service. It is something that business owners should be doing this time of year as they're reconciling year end. And it's a great opportunity to provide great value to your customers.
Let me just make one point right here, and it's kind of a half-baked idea, but as you gave that example, Paul, right, of the two business owners, right, that had put in the buy sell, back in 1985, and they had the 2 million of life insurance. Doesn't this really illustrate why buy sell agreements probably should have more permanent life insurance, right, that builds the cash value and grows over time as the business does? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and again, throughout our analysis, we're going to work with that business owner to again determine what makes the most sense for their particular business. There is not a one size fits all approach to what we do. If we are looking at plans that have multi-purpose use, like long-term cash value life insurance relative to low-cost term insurance, we're going to assess those needs based on the business owner's overall goals and objectives. So it is not something that is a standard boilerplate review that we just copy and paste the business owner's name on. It is something that we do take very serious as a part of the planning discussion. And I think one of the things, Chris, in addition to that we oftentimes will see is there are lots of business owners that don't have any sort of agreement. Right. This is very common in family-owned businesses where, hey, we don't need an agreement. We're family. Right. It's why we need a written document. Well, I would tell you, everyone here in the group, is blood is thicker than water until what gets involved? Money, right? So I tell this story everywhere I go because it's one of the most impactful experiences I've had in this business. About 15 years ago, we came in after the fact to help a surviving business owner kind of deal with a unfortunate situation. So we had a local chain of pizza restaurants on the West Coast where it was two brothers who owned this business, who had built it from the ground up. Very tight-knit family business, very tight-knit family. Well, one night late, one of the brothers is closing down one of the restaurants. He hops in his car, he drives home. He fell asleep at the wheel and wrapped his car around a tree and was killed. So we fast forward a couple of weeks and we've buried a father, we've buried a husband, we've also buried a business partner. We have to settle the business interest. Now, the good news was a couple of years prior, they had an agent who came in and sold them life insurance that they owned on each other as a part of a buy-sell agreement. The challenge was they didn't have a formal document in place. It was a handshake agreement. The intent was if one of the partners died, the insurance proceeds that went to their spouse would be used to buy out the remaining shares in the business. So if you can imagine a boardroom table, on one side you have the surviving brother, his wife, and their attorney. On the other side, you have the widow and her attorney. And they're there to settle the business interest. The widow says, I have no intention of being a part of the business. I inherited my husband's shares when he died. I know you have the insurance proceeds. I will go ahead and sell you the shares, and you can use the insurance proceeds to pay for it. Again, what their intent was at the onset. The brother-in-law's verbatim response was, if you think the business is worth that much, I will gladly sell you my half. And he kept the insurance proceeds. Now, what's the next step? She sues him. Yeah. Who wins?
Nobody.
The attorneys, right?
Yeah.
He does. The only contract that existed was between the insurance company and him. Yeah. Guess where that business is today? It doesn't exist. Forget about the money. Forget about the business. Think about Thanksgiving at that family household now, all of which can't replace him as an individual. But think about the impact of not having a written document that spells out who, what, when, where, and how that business is going to transfer. Those are the impactful things that you can talk to your business owner as to why these are important conversations to have.
It's huge.
Well, you talked about some of the obvious, like the obvious is like missing signatures. The obvious is matching up the valuation and the funding, right? The obvious is having disability, ownership. What about the not so obvious? What about recent court cases that have continued to climb through the lower courts into the Eighth Circuit, which are now going to be held by the Supreme Court, that is flying in the face of the most popular buy-sell strategy known to succession planning in the Connolly case. You know, that's the non-obvious, right? I don't think the business owners on this call or the folks that are listening in have really studied Crown Corporation or the Connolly case, right? It's not like the subject of the evening news. Give us some color around, again, the importance of reviewing buy-sell agreements due to potential legislative threats.
Yeah, and this case is a landmark case as far as we're concerned inside the exit planning, business succession world, and the insurance business as well, because ultimately what it shines a light on is the importance of having a well-reviewed document, a clear and concise valuation method, and the importance of actually following the agreement that we have in place. So the very basics around this particular case is you had two individual brothers who owned their particular business. One of those brothers passed away. There was insurance that was owned by the organization as a part of an entity purchase agreement. And there was a challenge that came up when there was a unclear valuation method inside of their buy-sell agreement. As a result, the IRS stepped in. They worked together to determine the right amount of actual value that should be transferred upon death. And then insurance was used to then buy those shares back from the deceased owner's estate. However, one of the considerations that wasn't taken into account is that the IRS did incorporate that those death benefit proceeds actually increased the value of the company because that cash flow came back to the business. As a result, it triggered an additional roughly $1 million of estate tax liability back to the deceased family's estate. Now, our thought process around really the importance of having well-documented, well-drafted agreements is that potentially these concerns can be alleviated through clear, concise valuation methods, following those methods, reviewing them consistently, tying the specific life insurance being required to purchase the shares. A lot of the things that we would recommend weren't followed in this particular case. And as a result, it's shining a light based off of additional tax liabilities that are now due and are being challenged now going in front of the Supreme Court of the United States. I mean, Anthony, what are your opinions here? What are your thoughts? And how are you hearing advisors talk to their clients about this?
Well, again, just the importance of a review, and if we can restructure the agreement, if it without too much friction to a cross purchase, we're doing it just to take all the guesswork off the table. Now, if there's legacy and multiple partners, and then we're rethinking things and just keeping a real close eye on what the next couple months will bring, or the next several months will bring through the legislative process. But yeah, Paul, recommending to convert to a cross purchase if at all possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, this is a value add that we can help bring to the table through this review process to make sure it's the right type of agreement, the right language is being used, and that ultimately we have a process and plan in place, not at a Phillies game. I thought Anthony was going to go Atlantic City for his, business review, but he went Phillies game instead. But thinking consistently about what is a clear, concise methodology of treating this as a living, breathing document as well.
Yeah. All right. So we're kind of through the process a bit. Paul, walk us through an example of a sample business, what the valuation could potentially look like, what a buy-sell strategy would look like. Like, start to showcase some of the value in a tangible, visual way.
Yeah, and Chris, I think this goes back to your conversation about the types of insurance we use and how they're multifaceted, because again, no business is the same as any other business. So this is a general contractor that we worked with last year, over 35 years in the business, been around for a long time, doing a mix of commercial and residential construction work. And they were long-term C corporation. So again, we want to know what's that corporate tax structure, because there's a lot of planning that goes into our entire process. So we have, a couple of different owners in the organization. It's a family-owned business, Gen 1, Gen 2, and then we're starting to see Gen 3 as well coming up into the fold. So as we look at the organization, we have a wide range of owners in the group. And the 71-year-old and the 58-year-old are starting, one, looking more closely as exiting out of the business, but are starting to think about their eventual exit out of the business and looking to the next generation to take over. So we really wanted to address not only how do we manage the risk in the buy-sell agreement today, but how do we start thinking about transitioning the older owners out of the business? How do we help a living buyout strategy as well? So as we look at the valuation, and again, as a part of our process, we look at 5 different valuation methods, and we're going to highlight the one that's most relevant to their particular industry. And then we're going to assess based on the ownership group, what is their liability if one of them were to pass away or get disabled inside of their buy-sell agreement as to what that liability should be covered with an insurance product. Now, as we look at this business, it had been around for a long time, so their growth assumptions, we were using relatively modest ones. But ultimately, one of the things we look at whenever we're having a planning discussion is what's the makeup of the business? What are they trying to accomplish? And then how can we deploy assets to help figure out and solve those particular problems? As you can see, the value today, there's a lot of insurance that we needed to purchase on a wide range of individuals in the organization. So the question is always, how do we fund those? Now, as is common with construction companies, they were sitting on a lot of cash. So their adjusted book value, their assets minus liabilities, 8.7 million, 7.3 million of cash and cash equivalents is sitting on their balance sheet. What that tells us is they got a bunch of money sitting around for bonding. And we have the ability to talk about how we can help leverage those dollars to help do multifaceted planning around their buy-sell agreement, addressing the need for death benefit, as well as addressing the need to buy out some of the older shareholders over time. So what we did is we positioned the ability to layer on life insurance as a part of buy, sell, and key person to increase their amount of coverage, providing low-cost term insurance for the majority owner, knowing he's not going to be there for a long period of time. That coverage can decrease as he gift shares down to the next generation. But then talking about that, large amount of cash sitting on the balance sheet, how to reposition that assets to partially fund the buy-sell. So what's unique about the solutions that we offer, because we are so focused on the business market, we have insurance products that are balance sheet neutral, meaning you put $1,000 in as life insurance premium, you have $1,000 asset on your balance sheet simultaneously. That's really important for an industry like this that is so balance sheet sensitive. And then again, we can have a flexible life insurance solution where the insurance amount gets adjusted based on the liability of the shares outstanding. And then we also start thinking about how do we retain some of those up and coming key employees, the project managers that we talked about earlier in the session that are so highly coveted. So I think what might be best is to illustrate really how this works. So when we look at the youngest individual in the organization that owns shares, we wanted to look at a scenario where we said, hey, we need to buy life insurance to cover the need of if he dies tomorrow, there's shares outstanding that need to be bought from his estate. But in reality, we want to bank on this guy living. We want to bank on this 38-year-old who's healthy, actually living versus dying in a short amount of time where term insurance makes sense. So we looked at an indexed universal life product, again, that balance sheet neutral, where we put $100,000 a year of premium into the policy, and we're booking an asset of $100,000 on the company balance sheet. The idea behind this is we're comparing this to what if we just bought a term insurance policy for $830 a year. That term insurance policy, while it serves a great purpose, is a non-deductible expense. Meanwhile, that life insurance, that index universal life, is going to accumulate tax deferred on the company balance sheet. So as you can see over time, the first 5 years, there's no cost effectively because we're booking that same asset by utilizing the IUL contract. Whereas on the term insurance, there is a sunk cost built into it by nature of the plan. So by year 5, we've paid about $4,100. Again, not a big number, but that's a non-deductible expense. If he doesn't die, we're out those dollars. But again, we want to think long term. 20, 25 years down the road, what happens if he's still there? He wants to buy into the business. He hasn't passed away. Well, by age 55 here, he's put in, we put in 1.8 million of premium inside this index universal life. We're sitting on an account balance of almost 2.8 million. So we're in the red we're in the black, excuse me, almost $1 million of positive tax deferred growth in the balance sheet. Whereas the term insurance, again, would have served its purpose. We've spent about 15 grand of money we'll never get back because he hasn't passed away. So this gives them flexibility of saying we can cover the life insurance need while creating an asset on the company balance sheet that is multi-purpose, whether to buy out shares, create an executive benefit, or if, God forbid, he were to pass away, there's still the same level of death benefit, if not higher, inside of that particular product. So we are looking at this from a long-term, with a long-term lens of not just what's the cheapest, shortest term fix, because that's not always the right solution. Anthony, anything you'd add to a kind of a scenario like this?
I love it, but I just tend to, can't help myself. I'm an estate planning, junkie, but I will say that as you move and evolve through the planning process, right, step one is nailing down the business, which is in most instances the most valuable asset, right? So once you have preserved, maximized, right, facilitated a continuation strategy in your business, then you can move to estate planning. And more often than not, we have the ability to incorporate the business in the estate planning strategy, particularly by way of funding, right? You mentioned the C Corp. I'm going to give you one example, right? If you can advance to the next slide, Paul, like there are some advantages to creating personal wealth through the use of the business, right? And way back, there's a gentleman named Bob Ritter who built arguably the most valuable software tool in the life insurance industry, and he always taught, if your corporate bracket is higher than your personal bracket, then you want to take distributions to go out and create personal wealth. Yet, if your corporate bracket is lower than your individual bracket, then you want to lend cash to create personal wealth. To avoid this and take advantage of this arbitrage and avoid the double taxation. So in the world of C Corps today, right, the federal corp rate is 21%. In the world of a high net worth, high earner individual, the individual tax rate is 37%, right, absent of any state taxes. So in this instance, wouldn't it be more advantageous to lend money from the C Corp over to the business owner's family dynasty trust to facilitate wealth creation outside the taxable estate? So, I think I carry this conversation on for well longer than we have today. But in this 18 column spreadsheet, what I'm showing is that exercise, right? How to arbitrage the corporate checkbook and the corporate income tax environment to create personal wealth. So, I think that's a whole nother, webinar in itself, but just another example of how once you're able to nail down your business and make certain that it will succeed you at least for another generation, hopefully 2, 3, or 4, then you can really start to dial in and complete your estate planning. But the business is typically the most important component to an overall estate plan. And don't overlook the ability to couple the business asset with creating personal wealth and wealth transfer for the next generation and hopefully 2, 3 additional. So, without any further discussion on this subject, I'd like to turn back to Chris. We're a bit past the top of the hour and bring this to a close.
Guys, I can't thank the two of you enough. Truthfully, that has been, that was a lot. And we probably, I think at one point Paul said we could probably go 6 hours here, and we won't do that for everyone's benefit. But guys, that was so so much packed into a short amount of time. You know, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get to any of the questions that were kind of submitted, or, you know, dive a little bit deeper into any of these topics. But, you know, I will say that we will have the materials that were shown today, you know, the Mento case studies, which again, I'm going to go trademark, you know, for Anthony's benefit after today's call. And I want to thank you guys both. Truthfully, that was a terrific job. I want to thank everyone online for attending. I hope it was educational and beneficial. I know it was. We are going to make the recording of today's session available probably in the next day or so. But again, thank you, Anthony Mento. Thank you, Paul Sargent. You guys absolutely crushed it today. And please, if there's any questions, you know, if anybody wants the materials, email, call, you know, send me a message on LinkedIn, or, you know, reach out to Anthony and Paul directly. You know, they're not exclusive to Chris Martens, although I feel like I did make them today. These guys, they deal and they work with everybody out across the country. So please reach out to me or reach out to these guys directly. But I just want to thank everybody. This has been definitely one of the best that I've ever put on. So thank you guys. And with that, I'll say everyone thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.